Global pandemic, local stories.
The podcast Global Pandemic, Local Stories was developed from collaborative activities between professors and students of Florida International University, FIU, and São Paulo State University, Unesp. Since November 2021, Professors Dr. Ming Fan from FIU and Dr. Luciani Taneni from Unesp worked together and created a virtual learning exchange project, which took place from March to April 2022. American and Brazilian students were grouped into 5 teams and used technical tools to work together. They collected information and interviewed people who faced educational challenges throughout the first 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. The very good results we have achieved encourage us to share with you interesting data and great stories from the US and Brazil.
Listening to this episode, you will learn more about the following topic: stories of digital learning. Stay with us.
Digital learning in pandemic times. What are the challenges? In this episode, we will discuss the use of technology in remote learning during a pandemic, the students' perspective on its implementation, and the lack of support and training for teachers and students to use technologies for learning. For this, we interviewed a teacher and a student who shared their experiences in this context. Since the interview with the teacher was given in written Portuguese, one of the team members recorded her voice.
Hi guys, I am Bruna de Paula and I am a Brazilian student of Masters at Unesp. In this São Paulo's University, I study orality and literacy around linguistic analysis. Let's go to the point. Today is a good day to talk about digital learning, and there's no big news in the fact that technologies have been added since the pandemic pushed learning throughout the world online overnight. But nowadays, mainly after the pandemic, it is still relevant to rely on science and reflect on the digital implementation at schools, since they already are in all social fields. Tell us more about it, Katie.
Hello everyone, my name is Katelyn Levy and I'm an American student at Florida International University in my senior year. I'm double majoring in English on a writing and rhetoric track and in natural and applied sciences with a focus on medical sciences, and I'm currently studying for the MCAT. As you know, COVID has caused many movements and changes all over the world, so it's not surprising that one of the most affected areas would be the education system.
To understand this situation better, let us move back. So, from then on, since 2020, we have been faced with the COVID-19 pandemic and its fluctuations and challenges. It has completely altered our way of life, as Katie said, and it has also consequently requested another demand for the use of communication tools with the use of digital technologies.
And it happened because the work settings became remote, schools closed their doors, and teaching had to be reshaped and brought closer to the digital universe, leading teachers and students to a greater exploration of digital tools such as the application of Google Meet and Zoom for online meeting, besides the use of smartphones and online learning techniques like the Google Forms tools in classes.
Considering all these, we point out that the advent of digital technologies is not a recent event in human life. When it is talked about these digital technologies, it is thought about a computer or internet areas.
However, fire discovery, wheel invention, and writing development are also technologies that came to improve humans' life. It is understood that the use of these available technologies in each epoch in the history of mankind radically transformed the ways of social organization, communication, culture, and learning.
At the current stage of civilization, Digital communication and information technologies enable for us new ways of accessing information, as new possibilities of interaction and communication and different ways of achieving learning. So, with these ideas stuck, there's a question to raise. Are teachers and students prepared to use digital technology as smartphones or Zoom meetings in school?
One truth is, these technologies require a broad knowledge of their specificities so that they can be used properly and efficiently in education's favor.
And we need to say, right, Katie, that irony lives here. Studies about these issues that were mentioned have been carried out since the early 2000s, but they were neglected by some responsible roles in the Brazilian education system, for example, and that's why there are another two questions that remain.
Why is it something so new for teachers and students? Should they already be prepared for these things that were predicted by scientists?
That's time to think about it.
Maybe neglected because education improvement is not a priority in governments. Schools need to follow the world's flow.
In an attempt to answer these questions, we called a Brazilian teacher to give a brief perspective of her reality with the use of technology in a free public school in the state of São Paulo. Her name is Janete Federico, and she has been teaching at this school for over 20 years. She comments that she faced a challenge with the quick change from in-person to digital scenarios and also in using tools that she was not used to. Some examples of these difficulties were the need to learn about various teaching platforms, such as Google Meet and Microsoft Teams at the same time, keeping in touch with students, and the technical problems as internet dropping out all the time.
Well, I felt very lost. I've always liked technology and always tried to use it, but when I found myself involved with such a big change, I had many difficulties. Getting to know many platforms at the same time and keeping in touch with students were big challenges. And there were the technical problems. Internet going down all the time, devices that were not always able to access some platforms.
When asked about training for using digital technologies, she states that teachers were not prepared for this, but she was willing to learn more about it.
Based on this, they should have experienced training courses. Teachers may be frustrated with this training gap to use these digital tools and improve their work and results.
So, why isn't this training happening? Are there no official documents to assist them with this?
Yes, there are. Let's go straight to the point. There is, for example, the Common National Curriculum Base from Brazil, which was implemented years before the pandemic chaos, and was already mentioning this digital demand on learning activity. But the ideas there about the use of digital technology was not really implemented. It was only implemented because of an urgency.
There's also an official document in the USA that is called Common Core State Standards, which is used as a guide for teaching and also serves to predict this sort of usage. The US was not prepared to deal with digital learning in the pandemic. We were used to using technology in school, in the classrooms, but not everyone had laptops at home. Schools were scrambling to try to give those students laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots so that they could use at home. This process took a very long time, and in all fairness, before the pandemic, there were no set rules or standards for digital learning. All we knew was that technology was important for us to do our schoolwork, but the pandemic really highlighted that.
This moment, then, could be less rough for all of them if we had the government support to assist the school agents in this new era.
Education needs to follow the world because it used to understand that and to not be behind the times. Bruna, tell us what really happened because of this lack of assistance.
That's sad, Kate. But the results of all this unpreparedness brought to teachers and students insecurity, anxiety, and fear of doing things in an inadequate way and not achieving the expected results due to the new setting that was suddenly implemented.
It's crystal clear the students struggle with disconnectedness, lack of body language, and physical socialization. We talked with a North American teenager who talked a little bit about how he felt during this process of learning changes.
His name is Julian, and he's actually one of our team member's siblings. He's currently 16, and he was about 14 when the pandemic began, so he actually had to make the transition from the middle school from high school remotely, and he attended a charter school.
And when interviewed by Valerie, she asked him, Julian, would you say digital learning has made your life easier since the start of the pandemic, or was it more stressful? And he happened to give a pretty interesting answer.
Well, to be honest, at first it was really annoying and difficult because there was no such system for us, and the structure was hard to follow.
Yeah, and in the interview, he actually talks about some of the isolation issues he went through as well, so he didn't get to see any of his friends, and how they had to use Google Classroom for everything, and then they started using Zoom as well, and it didn't feel the same as attending real physical school, so he mentions he felt demotivated.
For this reason, Bruna, now that things mean to go back to normal, schools and teachers have actually found it beneficial to include a lot of what they did online during the pandemic into their physical schools. So there seems to be a lot more digital learning interactions than there was prior.
We can say then that students and teachers had to learn new ways to promote interaction and collaboration during the lessons.
It must be understood that from now on, our educational system will not go back to the way it was before. COVID-19 has not only caused some changes in our teaching and learning behavior at school, but it has also shown some shortcomings that have been frustrating teachers, the lack of training for the use of digital technologies in the classroom naming one.
Exactly! It's important to acknowledge all of the changes that have happened because of the pandemic, and how far we all have come since the beginning of the pandemic.
In addition, being forced to use the digital tools during the pandemic may push the teachers and students to explore new ways to promote interaction and collaboration.
To sum up, the discussion about the burning topic was urgent. Digital learning in pandemic times challenged and changed students' and teachers' perspectives towards education approaches.
But to be honest, we truly believe we still haven't finished this subject. It is the opposite, actually. We've just started. Let's spread this content to make people aware of digital learning tools in schools.
Are you aware now?
Thanks for this time together.
We are grateful for the contributions of the interviewees, the technical support of Lobo, Laboratory of Phonetics at Unesp, and the academic support of Stephanie Dotcher at FIU, the coordinator of the Collaborative Online International Learning COIL, and Ana Cristina Solomon at Unesp, the coordinator of the Brazilian Virtual Exchange, Bravi. Give us your feedback, sending emails to mingfang@fiu.edu.
And Luciane Tenani at luciane.tenani@unesp.br. Thanks for listening.
Global pandemic. Local stories.